Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday's edition of Weekend Waypoints. Joe Healy here for SEC Extra at D1 Baseball, getting you ready for an absolutely jam-packed Friday around the SEC. So let's jump right in and get to it. You see, we have the scoreboard up here for Friday's action. I guess my first thing I would say is, it's another interesting weather weekend. You see already there, Kentucky and Lipscomb moved up to 1 o'clock. I'm here in Columbia, South Carolina. Um, they're still sticking to trying to play tonight at 7 p.m. But as I look out my window here, I don't see. I would say it's more likely than not they're not playing tonight, and if they do, they're playing very late tonight. So we're just gonna have to take a wait and see approach with that. But even in places where they are going to get games in, going to be a little chilly tonight. Weather looks like it kind of turns around across a lot of the SEC footprint starting tomorrow, but tonight is going to be a chilly one in a lot of places. Excuse me. But yeah, so jam packed. We'll get to a lot of this throughout the show, obviously. But you've got the Houston tournament there with Vanderbilt. LSU is there also, big game there tonight. But then you've got rivalry series, Georgia Tech, Florida Miami, Clemson South Carolina. You've got Texas A&M playing at Globe Life Field in Arlington. You've got a really good series, Connecticut going to Auburn. You've got the Frisco Classic with Alabama playing, Indiana, Dallas Baptist, and one other program that I'm missing here. But regardless, good weekend there. And then Arizona is the other team. Iowa heading to Ole Miss, another good non-conference series. Iowa took it on the chin last weekend in Jacksonville, but that's obviously a really, really talented team, so that's not going to be easy for an Ole Miss club that obviously is still trying to find its footing. So good stuff across the board. Big weekend ahead. Couple of news items, just things to touch on before we get going with Friday's stuff from midweek action. Pretty straightforward week. Vanderbilt picked up a couple of nice wins against MVC contenders, Indiana State and Evansville, and just blitzed Indiana State 20-4. And that's obviously a good Indiana State team. We know that. So impressive stuff there for Vanderbilt. Stetson upset Florida. The only kind of notable, and those upsets obviously will happen throughout the season, but the notable thing there, Luke McNeely, the freshman, didn't get out of the first inning. A tough start for him. So, Florida obviously hopes that's not going to be the norm moving forward, and they can get him into, get him to a place of being a quality contributor for this club moving forward. Michigan State, speaking of blitzing teams, beat Georgia 19-6 in 7 innings in Athens. Not a good day for the Georgia pitching, obviously, for a Georgia team that came in pretty hot, and so Michigan State really, really got to them. And at a certain point, Georgia was running out, some of the guys that you don't necessarily anticipate being big parts of the bullpen just to kind of get some guys some run in a game that got away from them. So that's part of it. But still, Georgia jumped on them or Michigan State jumped on Georgia early and often. Positive for Georgia there. Charlie Condon, 3 home runs. The guy's incredible. I don't know what else to say. Mark and I talked on Highway to Hoover earlier this week about, it being possible that we're overlooking Charlie Condon as maybe the best hitter in college baseball. I don't know. I'm not really actually interested in that debate, but man, he's certainly in the conversation, and he gets overlooked because Georgia wasn't a postseason team this year and not expected to be a postseason team this year. So that's kind of the way it works. That's the way it happens. But man, that guy is really, really good. Vanderbilt injuries, a couple things to note here. Shout out to Aria Gerson of the Tennessean, who reported some of this from Tim Corbin in the middle of the week. Jack Bolger out. He's got a hamstring injury. The quote she passed along from Tim Corbin said he'd be out, quote, a while. We'll see on that, obviously. Chris Maldonado, shoulder injury, likely out this weekend. That seemed like, based on just reading between the lines there, seems like they're more positive about getting him back sometime relatively soon, certainly, than Bolger. David Horn, the pitcher, may throw on the mound in the coming days, still obviously on the path back there. So a few notable things. Speaking of injuries in the state of Tennessee, AJ Causey into the rotation for the Volunteers this weekend. He's been really good. So I think if you're Tennessee, you look at that as, hey, that's not so bad. But the reason being, and the negative here, is that AJ Russell is out this weekend, at least from a rotation standpoint. He's not in the projected rotation, which is AJ Causey, Drew Beam, and TBA for Tennessee. Now, perhaps you look at the opponent of Bowling Green and you decide, hey, let's give him at least another week here. We don't. If Tennessee ends up in really close games with Bowling Green, that's a different issue that AJ Russell himself probably wouldn't have fixed if that turns out to be the case. So, maybe just some managing the game. And if it was an SEC weekend, maybe it'd be a different story. But for now, all we know, AJ Russell out, AJ Causey in for Tennessee. All right, let's get to previewing a big Friday around the conference. Our series of the weekend, I think it has to be Clemson, South Carolina in a weekend. And I try to do traditional series with the series of the weekend. And soon we won't have to worry about that because the tournaments are pretty much over after this weekend. But series of the weekend, Clemson, South Carolina, the first time both teams have been ranked in the top 25 at the time of the series since 2017. Kind of amazing. Two teams that have, it feels like they, every year with this series, they kind of alternate which team feels down. One team is obviously better than the other, or, and so sometimes you've had one team ranked and the other not. There have been years where neither have been ranked. Tough years for both, but both teams playing well early on this year. A couple of keys here. How does the South Carolina pitching hold up? The rotation has been pretty good so far. I think there's been a lot of positive there. Eli Jones in his Friday starts has been very good. You have to consider the competition, sure, but he's done what you're looking for. And then Roman Kimball's looked strong. So in particular, that's been a real positive with him coming off of his injury from last season. You weren't exactly sure what you were going to get there. So positive stuff there. But how does this South Carolina pitching staff hold up against a Clemson lineup that is pretty dynamic, especially now that, Will Taylor looks like maybe he's starting to swing the bat a little better. Started 1 for 23, Will Taylor, before hitting 3 home runs in the midweek. So perhaps heating up there, but Cam Cannarella, we know what to expect from him, and it's a lineup in general for Clemson that's hitting well over 300 so far this season. They've played some reasonably good competition, no like major conference opponents until this weekend. But Xavier is a team that could compete for a regional out of the Big East. Kennesaw State is a team that could compete to be in a regional, and those are their weekend opponents. So that's actually not nothing, I would say, hitting well against those two teams. My question with Clemson is that their pitching staff, and maybe it's Xavier and Kennesaw State having decent offenses, I don't know, their pitching still has some things to straighten out. Their rotation has been, I would say, good, not great, perhaps, at least looking at the numbers. And, I've not watched every inning of every Clemson game, so maybe there's some nuance there, but the numbers aren't where Kimball's and Jones in particular for South Carolina are. And there's still some bullpen guys Clemson is waiting to come around. Some guys that you expect are going to be big parts of the deal for Clemson come the meat of the season. But Clemson's bullpen is strong. It's deep. So I suspect, that kind of good or bad in the rotation for Clemson this weekend, that South Carolina is going to see a lot of bullpen arms. I think it's going to be a little bit of a parade of bullpen arms, because that's kind of how Clemson won games sometimes last year when they didn't get lengthy starts. The bullpen was a strength for them. They brought back a lot of that bullpen. So I suspect that we'll see a decent bit of that. Again, the weather is going to be a factor. Whether or not they play tonight, the next 2 days look better. I'm confident those 2 games will get in. But they're going to be kind of gross games. Like, it's going to be weather-wise. It's going to be gray. There's chances of rain both of the next 2 days. So maybe that depresses offense a little bit. That's good news for the pitching staffs. But these are two teams that kind of want to play wide open. They kind of want to score some runs and get out there and put some runs on the board. And it just may not necessarily be something conducive to that this weekend. But we shall see. Regardless, I'm looking forward to being there. It's my first time at this tournament. So, I've heard obviously great things about it through the years, and with these two teams having high expectations this season, I think, I think this year is going to be above what it's been even in the past. So looking forward to the atmosphere, if nothing else. The pitching matchup of the day, this one to me seems pretty simple. It's Texas and LSU tonight at Minute Maid Park. Texas's LeBaron Johnson Jr. against LSU's Luke Holman. LSU does officially make the switch, moving Luke Holman to Friday. With the way he'd pitched the first 2 weekends, I think we kind of saw this coming at some point. Didn't know if maybe you wait till conference play, or you wait until you have a Thursday series so that you can move things up a day and then swap it around. But they go with it here against a really good Texas team. And this should be one heck of a pitching matchup and one heck of an atmosphere, by the way. I've been to that Houston tournament because, for those who don't know, I grew up in Houston, and that Houston tournament was part of how I got into college baseball, going to that every year. Before I could drive, my poor mom who really didn't care all that much about baseball, much less college baseball, drove me there. So God bless my mom for doing that. And then, but so I've been going since a young age, and I know from just lots of games there that the fan bases that bring out a lot of fans in this tournament are Texas A&M, and LSU. And there are some others, but those are kind of the three big ones that bring out a lot of fans. And so to have two of those in this tournament and then facing each other Friday night is going to create a mega atmosphere at Minute Maid Park. So looking forward to, following that along. I suspect I will be following that along with that game just because of either a rain delay or a cancellation here at South Carolina. But even if they do play on time there, I imagine that's going to be a second screen experience for me watching those two pitch. Johnson is coming off of 8 shutout innings against Cal Poly last weekend. Kind of an amazing weekend for Texas on the mound last weekend against Cal Poly. Maybe Cal Poly's not any good, but against any Division I team, and Cal Poly may not be good, but Cal Poly is also not awful. Like, I can guarantee you that. And against any Division I team, what they did last weekend, shutting out the Mustangs in all 3 games of the series, is incredible. I don't care who you're playing at the Division I level. That's really, really impressive stuff. Not just to pitch that well, but to have the mental sharpness to not kind of, once you've, especially on a Sunday when you've got the series at hand, you're about to sweep, you're feeling comfortable, to not let as a pitcher, focus lag and give up a bomb or walk some guys or whatever that lead to runs. That's really impressive stuff. So runs might be at a premium, and that's interesting when you consider that LSU's offense has shown flashes. Certainly the talent is there for it to be a really good offense, but they've also had moments where they weren't as productive, right? And we knew this might be the case this year with what they lost after last year, but they've had some good output. But also they had, opening weekend, they played 2 games against Central Arkansas and scored 6 total runs. They lost a game last weekend against Stony Brook and scored 2 runs. So this is a lineup that can occasionally turn in a little bit of a flat performance, and they're using a lot of players on offense. They're clearly trying to find the right formula, is LSU in the lineup. But this is going to be their biggest test so far against LeBaron and Johnson, and vice versa, right? I mean, Texas hasn't seen a Luke Holman yet. So runs, I think, will be at a premium at Minute Maid Park. Shout out to David Erickson on YouTube, who just dropped in a Go Big Red to our YouTube comments. So thank you, David Erickson, who I assume is a Husker fan there, for jumping in on an SEC live stream. I do sincerely appreciate folks who are kind of neutral in this fight to jumping in and being a part of the program. Let's get some plugs in before I let you guys go today. On the site now, my weekend preview is up, so I go more in depth with the Houston tournament, Clemson, South Carolina. I wrote about Alabama in the Frisco Classic. We didn't really talk about that one as much today, but go check that out if you want kind of an in-depth look at Alabama in that tournament in the Lone Star State. So that's out there this weekend. Stuff to look for from the D1 baseball staff. I will be, as I've said a few times, Clemson, South Carolina. Hopefully we get some ball in at some point in the weekend. Kendall will be in Houston. It's basically a home game for Houston. So he will be there to see LSU and Vanderbilt among everyone else. But if you're a Tigers fan, Commodores fan, I'm sure you're already following Kendall, but make sure you're doing so as he covers that tournament this weekend and writes about it in the coming days. Aaron will be in Frisco to see Alabama among the other teams there. So Tide fans, make sure you are plugged into what Aaron is doing there and reading what he puts out from that tournament. And then, of course, the next 2 mornings, make sure to read D1 Digest. That's the daily roundup of everything that happened around the country. So grab your cup of coffee, your glass of water, your bagel, your breakfast, whatever you do for breakfast to get your day going. Pull up D1 Digest and go through it as you get ready for your day. That's going to do it, folks. One heck of a day of SEC baseball around the conference. I'm really excited for it. The first 2 weeks have been a lot of meh mixed with some excellent stuff kind of in between that. So I'm excited to have a Friday and then a weekend full of just really, really good stuff. And you got these types of weekends, you got to keep your head on a swivel. So it's a lot of fun, but it's easy to miss some things. So I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I will. And I'll talk to you tomorrow morning with Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints. Thanks, everybody.